Here. Here.
Oh, Mike, we have mics.
See? Bail you out. That's too bad.
We can share mine.
Mine works. Well, that's why, this is the good side. Here.
Here. Oh, we have TV up and the mic's back up and running. So the right side of the chamber microphones are not working this evening, so they will be sharing my microphone for the time being. So I ask that when you come up, if you just step up and speak and return to your seats.
Number 2, approval of the journal of the regular meeting of December 18th, 2017 and January 1st, 2018.
All in favor, all opposed?
Calendar item.
Point of personal privilege, Madam President.
State your point, Councilor.
I'd like the council and the audience to stand in a moment of silence for former colleague Gerald Esposito, who passed away yesterday. Thank you. I have a resolution I'd like to read. For those who may not have known Gerald Esposito, he was a former Ward 5 councilor, former administrative assistant to Mayor Reinstein, former registry inspector, a state police officer, and a lifelong resident of the city of Revere. I'd like to read this resolution, if I may, and it says, resolution of condolence, whereas former city councilor Gerald Esposito has rendered conspicuous, faithful, and honorable public service to the citizens of the city of Revere in his duties as a city councilor. And whereas Almighty God, in his infinite wisdom, has called former city councilor Gerald Esposito to his eternal reward. And whereas the sad calling from our midst of former city councilor Gerald Esposito leaves a vacancy in the official family of the city of Revere that will be difficult to fill and a memory that will long be cherished. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Revere City Council extend to the family of former city councilor Gerald Esposito, on behalf of the citizens of Revere, our heartfelt sympathy and sincerest regrets on their profound loss, and be it further resolved that in recognition of former City Councilor Esposito's service to the citizens of the city of Revere, that the City Council pay sincere tribute to his memory by spreading upon the official records of the Revere City Council a copy of this resolution, ordered by the City Council on a roll call. Councilors Ganasso, Councilors Keefe, McKenna, Morabito, Novoselsky, Patch, Powers, Rizzo, Rotundo, and Zambuto, and the City Council President Janino voting in the affirmative. Approved by City Council President Jessica Janino, attested by City Clerk Ashley Melnick, and witness thereof, whereas this resolution of condolence is given at the Revere City Hall this 8th day of January in the year of our Lord, 2018, and of the independence of the United States of America, 241st. And I'd like to mention that there have been no arrangements published in the paper yet, but I would imagine they will be tomorrow. And for those who were not aware of his passing, he was just a great guy, lived in the Point-of-Pines section of Revere, and was a credit to the city of Revere, not only in his public service, but as a human being. Thank you. I'm going to ask that this be passed on to the family.
Thank you, Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Madam President.
Councilor McKenna. Counselor McKenna is going to join me again so we can hear her on TV because that side's not working.
Thank you. Last weekend, we had a major snowstorm, and we had extreme high storm surge. As many parts of the city flooded, parts of Beachmont were underwater. Many families lost their car, heat, their boilers, washers, and dryers. I want to thank the following city departments and the people who came to aid for these people. They went above and beyond their duties. I'd like to thank the Revere Fire Department, especially Chief Chris Bright, the DPW, especially Donnie Goodwin and Paul Argenzio, the Water Department, who pumped the water out of these houses. Some people had 4.5 feet of water. The Revere Police and Chief Guido, I was in contact with Chief Guido the whole time. The plow drivers, especially Jimmy Mercurio, who I spent 3 hours with driving around the city. It was horrendous. 311 department, where I called a couple of times, where we all probably called a couple of times to get stuff done. The neighbors that came out to aid the people that were in need. The ROTC that shoveled 40-something families. And everybody else that I forgot to mention, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor McKenna. It was a very great point. Counselor Novoselsky, state your point.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, not related to the storm, I had an incident at my home this past weekend, actually yesterday, where I lost my heat, and my wife is disabled and with oxygen, and it was not a very nice time. Below zero weather, and it was a bad time. We couldn't find heaters anywhere. We went to 5 different stores around the Saugus, Lynn, Chelsea, couldn't find a heater anywhere. And my neighbor said to me, well, why don't you try Facebook? Maybe something will happen. And I wrote up a little piece, and within an hour, I had 10 heaters at my door. People deliver them. And I just want to thank everybody, and my wife, my son, my grandchildren, my daughter-in-law, you know, on their behalf. Thank you so much. It was heartfelt knowing that there's people out there, as Joanne said, to help other people. You know, and usually I'm in a position where I'm helping people. And here is where my constituents came to me with all these heaters. And like I said, they delivered them to my front door. And we still don't have heat. We won't have it till Wednesday. But we're dealing with at least we have the heaters to keep us somewhat warm. And I just want to thank everybody from my heart and my family's heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Counselor.
4, 2018 City Council Committee Assignments.
All in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 5, introduction of the City Council Rules of Order scheduled for adoption.
Counselor Guanasso, if you want to come up.
During the course of the past few years, the major bone of contention has been rules of order, mainly rule number 30, motions. And this, I think, puts light on the fact that there were so many different avenues of thought, 2 motions, 3 motions, 4 motions, none of which were correct. And I think this, when we review our motions and we see Rule 30, it clarifies it pretty nicely, and it's fair to each and every one of us, I believe. And the portion that I shall read is MGL Chapter 43, Section 18. Members of the City Council shall introduce not more than 5 motions at any meeting of the City Council. Now, bearing in mind, 5 motions in any given City Council is more than adequate, I would believe. And the 5-motion limitation shall include those motions submitted as late motions, meaning if you have 3 on the agenda and then you submit 2 lates, you have your 5, your quota of 5. And I think that's being fair to each and every one of us. I think it extends the opportunity. And then also, there is provisions in here that suggest that if a counselor really has other motions that have to be attended to, well, there's 10 others on this council who will be glad to co-sponsor those motions for that particular counselor. So again, this is pretty fair, and this is 5 motions, and it puts to rest the foolish debates back and forth about what we should do. Some say 3, some say 4. Let's attend to our rules of order, which is so important for the integrity of the city council. And I think that's the important part of this whole process, is that we uphold the integrity of the city council to show professionalism, but also to show our residents that, you know, there are rules of order that people have to attend to. We issue orders up here on a daily basis based on the fact of, we call them zoning, and we call them ordinances that have to be attended. This puts some presence of our support, and I ask that all the city councilors go forward and hopefully they have their support, because this has been on the books. We just never really read into it, and it's here for every one of us. It's not intended for any individual. I think 5 motions is more than adequate. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President, to that particular motion, the question that I have is, in the event that you miss a week, or for that matter, the council is suspended for 2 weeks, or, for example, you're on vacation for the summer, clearly one would have to note that there would be more than 5 motions within a month time frame. How do you handle such an instance, if you could tell me, considering that things do pile up and that that does take place from time to time, and unfortunately, you can never get 10 people to agree on the same issue, more importantly, more than 5 issues. So is there a remedy for that type of an issue?
Well, I think the remedy is very simple, and I think what leads us to previous experience. In the past couple of years, we've had, at the end of each calendar item, we had a unfinished business, and there was about 20 motions that were unattended to. And the maker of the motions didn't see fit to follow them through. They just let them die. So, so sometimes I think maybe motions, you know, if you want to put the truth by out there, made just to gather attention, because, like I stated on several occasions, the Revere Journal prints down every motion that's submitted by this council, and that shows people out there, well, look at this council's doing all this work. But, you know, the rest of us are going by the rules of order by calling department heads individually without making this fanfare and not getting this attention, and yet we're achieving a point. Namely, the ward councilors wouldn't survive one re-election if they weren't attentive to the people's business. That's for sure. They're the first line of defense. The first people that look for information, they get right from their ward councilor. That's the first thing. And I would suggest very strongly, and I've been here several years, that every councilor at large knows that, and they've said it on many occasions. So there's room to get the job done. And if we're all out for 5 weeks or whatever it is, it's only 3 weeks in the summer. We have 1 meeting in July, we have 1 meeting in August, and again, is to protect the integrity of the city council and the people's business, because we're not conducting business while our residents are on vacation. It's a twofold type of, you can interpret that any way you want, but that is, the long and short of it is, and that's the nature of the fact, that people's business shouldn't be conducted when people are on vacation. And I think 5 motions, we can vote it up or vote it down tonight, but, you know, it's not the wish of Arthur Nassau. This has been on the books. It's just never been, you know, we just never spelled it out. And so it's not, and it's not aimed at any particular person. It's just for each and every one of us.
Thank you, Madam President. This has not been on the books for quite a long time. It's only been on the books for, I believe, within this past 4 years, but I could be mistaken. I don't believe it was on in 2003, 2005, 2007, 2008, or for that matter in 2009. My recollection is correct. I'm not going to debate the premise of it.
I'll check that out, because
I'm
you're
not going
throwing
to
out dates
debate.
that no one has
I thought I had the
information
floor,
in front
Madam
of them.
President. I'm not going to debate the premise of unfinished business nor the articulation of it as you present it. I disagree with your premise. The city does not go to sleep during our vacations. In fact, they do keep forward. I was a ward councilor. Anybody who wants to, debate the issue of calling department heads versus putting in motions, I'm more than happy to present that. But I disagree with this, and I will let the vote be where it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Novoselsky, you want to step up to the hot seat?
Get out of my way, will you? Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, many of us have been on the council for, 10 or more years, except for our newest councilors. And I remember 5 motions always being, for the last 15 years, that it's been 5 motions limit. But we have to realize, but there's also a section that allows only to speak on 3 motions in Section 8. So that's been right along as far as I know. Now, we have to realize too that everybody puts in 5 motions. There's 11 of us. We're gonna have 55 motions that night, potentially. If they're needed, they're fine. But we have to realize, and I'm talking to all my colleagues, that we have to realize some of these motions shouldn't be here. We have a 311 system for you to call it in and get work done. It gets done faster by going through 311 now than having to put a motion in, having our clerk send it to the mayor, which takes 3-4 days by the time they get to the paperwork and everything, and by the time the mayor sends it down to Public Works or Engineering or Health Department, that's another 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days. So now you're talking 2-3 weeks before it's even touched or addressed by anybody. That's why the 311 system should be used by all of us. And I mean all of us, not for small DPW repairs. Potholes shouldn't be up here. 311, they get done faster. And I'm just using this as one example. I'm sure there's other examples that we can go that you'll get things done faster if you go right to the departments or the 311 system. Don't use the council for little, small stuff. You're welcome. Okay, get the hint? Do you understand?
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Any other counselors wish to speak on this? And just a clarification, this is not changing our rules or adding or amending anything in the rules. This is just reaffirming the existing rules of order that have been in place for as long as I've been up here. Any other counselors? Counselor Patch and then Counselor Rizzo.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to make a point that if we could have the clerk mention to the mayor's office that never mind how many motions we put in, but the ones we do put in are supposed to be responded to within, I believe, 10 days. Is that it? We're supposed to get...
The mayor has to sign them within 10 days. It doesn't mean that an action is taken within 10 days.
Right, but I know in my past 10 years, between the past 2 administrations before us, that we'd always receive a letter signed from the mayor's office in the response to our motion, at least that we knew that it got to him and something was going to be done. That hasn't happened.
I'm not aware of the policies of the mayor's office.
Okay, I just want to suggest that maybe that we do it the way that the past 2 administrations did it, and that we receive a letter if we put a motion in and get a response, that it's going to be taken care of. Thank you. Okay, I want to make that, can I put that in as a motion?
Will you take that up now, Madam Clerk, or after we adopt the rules? After?
You're on the rules of order right now.
Okay, so we'll take that up as soon as we finish
Okay,
adopting the rules.
Thank you.
Counselor Rizzo and then Counselor Powers.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I just wanted some clarification. So 5 motions can be submitted. You still only can speak on 3 motions, correct?
Correct.
The one thing that I will say, regarding putting motions in, and I totally understand. I think you guys, you know, those of us that have been on the city council for any length of time understand that you get phone calls during the week, and you try to respond through the various departments, whether it's Public Works or the Police Department, Fire Department, whatever it happens to be. But I think one of the things, and this maybe ward councilors maybe can relate to this even more so than at-large councilors, you know, constituents sometimes, you know, you call 311. Now, if it doesn't get responded to right away, who are they calling back? They're calling you back. At least if you've got a paper trail through a motion, not a pothole. I don't think you should put a pothole, repair potholes on a certain street. But if you have issues that are impacting a resident's quality of life, and, you know, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with documenting it at a council meeting. Now, that doesn't mean that you should go on and speak on it for 10 minutes. But at least if you put a motion in, maybe follow it up and send a letter to the resident and tell them, hey, this motion was passed at this meeting, and get back to me in a few weeks if it hasn't been responded to. But, you know, I don't necessarily think by putting a motion on here that's not some global issue that affects the entire city is wrong. I think that in particular ward councilors should be able to put an issue, you know, put a motion in that's, you know, for whatever that reason might be. And then, you know, again, have that paper trail so they can say, look, I put a motion in on January 8th, I put a motion in on March 10th, and I put a motion in on May 17th, and nothing's happened. You call 311, you go off into the abyss. Maybe there's a trail, maybe there's not, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get done. So I just want to, you know, for the record, just say that I would support 5 motions. That's not a problem. Speak on 3, that's not a problem. But I think in terms of what is put in the calendar or what is submitted as a motion, I think doesn't necessarily have to be an issue that is not related to some of these departments where we might get a response. It doesn't mean you can't put a motion in and call 311, but get a paper trail going is how I feel. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Madam President. I very seldom, if at all, have put in any more than 3 motions at any one time. I don't think it's necessary. I have a motion in tonight regarding Wonderland, and the reason that's in there is because I'm going to request the mayor to initiate action down there. That's a different thing. That's not a department. I think that 311, I've put motions in, I've called 311, put in requests, and I think that's a good thing because it gives me the opportunity to call back and say, hey, what happened to that situation down on Arcadia Street? And they should be required to answer me and tell me either it's being done next week, or we can't do it because they said they don't have the money. And I think all of us have at one time or another, several times, many times, probably called a department head to get something done. I ran into somebody like, let's say, Paul Argenzio and said, Paul, there's a pothole at such and such a place, can you take care of it? Or you run into Ray Adriani when he was here, and you'd say, Ray, can you put a sign up here? And those things would get done, and then you knew they were done. So I think five motions is more than adequate, in my opinion. Even if everybody spoke on 3, you'd have 33 people speaking on motions up here. It's not necessary. As a ward councilor, if I want to get my job done, I call a department head, I go into the mayor's office if I'm not getting a response, and it gets done. Sometimes they can't do it. Sometimes there's a monetary factor involved. But I think if you work at it every day and spend the time doing what you're supposed to be doing, then it works out fine. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Zambudo, then Counselor Rotundo. And again, we're sticking to the rules of order.
Okay. I don't have a problem with the way the motion structure is on the rules of order. I think it's fine. And I'm one of the longest serving counselors up here. probably the least amount of motions of anybody here. But I think if you talk to any of my constituents, they will tell you when they call me, they get results, because I call people, put in work orders, do it the way it's supposed to be done, don't grandstand on a pothole, and things get done. So there's ways of doing things properly here. And the one problem I do have is that when we don't meet for several meetings, be it in the summer or whatever, there is an argument to be made that somebody would want to put more than the allotted motions in. So I don't know if we want to look at that in the rules of order or just have a separate way of doing that, but we might want to look at that. But you don't just get things done up here by motion. There's a lot of ways to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rotundo.
Thank you. To that vein, and then I would ask if we could move forward. One, I'm trying to find a letter that I do know exists from the mayor to Donnie Goodwin and his department head stating that no outside request to be given to him or his department heads, or they could be reprimanded up to the point of being terminated. I received that by several people within the departments. So I don't use that route, generally speaking, because, quite frankly, I don't want to jeopardize somebody's job. If you didn't see that memo, I'm sure to find it within the next hour or so on my phone, and I'll be more than happy to publish it on my Facebook and give it to any individual here. That said, I agree with Councilor Zambudo. Perhaps there's a way of streamlining issues when we do go on vacation. You don't have to articulate on every single motion. Sometimes it speaks for itself is the simplest way to get something accomplished, and quite frankly, that's all you need so that the paper trail is sent forward. I do agree with you all that having things related to non-substantial DPW issues are meaningless up here. They should be done through 311 and other department methods, or for that matter, through the mayor's office via email, which is what I generally use. So perhaps there might be a way to kind of meet in the middle by saying that during a vacation time, a council will have the ability to recognize his motions that he wishes or she wishes to have passed, and two, that he wishes or she wishes to speak on. Because I don't believe, and I'm sure you all can agree, or at least I hope you all can agree reasonably, that saying it speaks for itself is less cumbersome than having a diatribe on a particular issue. If we can meet in the middle on that type of an issue over a summer, I leave that up to the discretion of the chair, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, councilors. On adopting the rules of orders, all in favor? On Councilor Patch's substitute motion, all in favor? Suspension of rules, all in favor? I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our state representative, Rosalie Vincent, who's in attendance this evening. Madam Clerk, can we take up calendar item number 12 under suspension?
Yes. Calendar item number 12, motion presented by Councilor Janino, that the City Council send a letter to the DEP in opposition to Wheelabrator's proposal to expand the Saugus Ash landfill.
If it's all right with the council, I'm going to ask State Rep. Vincent to speak, and then I'll open it up to the council. Representative Vincent? I feel like I'm on a talk show, having everyone come up and sit with me tonight.
This is fun. Oh, I've never sat up here before with my cousin, the council president. Okay, well, first of all, no. First of all, I want to thank Council President Janino for offering this motion, and I want to thank the members of the City Council who have stood with me in opposition to this expansion. I and the people that I represent in Riverside, Oak Island, and the Pine sections of our city appreciate it as well. Before I go on, I just want a special shout out to Councilor Rizzo for already sending a letter of opposition to the expansion, and I deeply appreciate that. I know you were steadfast when you were mayor, and you've continued to be so. So I just want to acknowledge that I was truly heartfelt and appreciative when I received your letter that had been sent, so thank you. When I speak about Wheelabrator Saugus, I usually start with the fact that it is the only unlined ash landfill that is still allowed to operate in the Commonwealth. The fact that it is located in the midst of a wetland and that is designated as an area of critical environmental concern. The fact that this 40-year-old unlined landfill would never be allowed to be built by today's standards. The fact that it is less than a half a mile from our friends and our neighbors' homes. The fact that this landfill was supposed to be totally capped and closed in 1996, or the fact that it's located in a flood zone. That said, tonight, I want to talk to you about other facts and why you, as a council, should support Councilor Giannino's motion to send a letter to the DEP and oppose any further expansion of the Saugus landfill. It is a fact that in the late 1980s, it was not the DEP, which is the Department of Environmental Protection, that mandated scrubbers to be put on the facility to prevent toxic fly ash from going into our neighborhoods. It was only because of legislative action mandated by State Representative Steve Angelo. It's also a fact that in 2011, Wheelabrator settled a $7.5 million lawsuit, the highest environmental settlement in Massachusetts history. Fact, it was not the DEP that discovered, Wheelabrator's wrongdoing. It was actually a whistleblower and the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. So when some people say they have total confidence in what the DEP says, sadly, I do not. Fact, Wheelabrator's proposal calls for opening the already capped portions of the landfill. Fact, the area is the closest to the Pines River and directly across from our constituents. Fact, the two valleys that Wheelabrator wants to reopen were put in place to help protect the landfill from storm water surges. In fact, this proposal would extend the life of this archaic landfill for an additional 10 years and add 500,000 more tons of ash to this extremely vulnerable wetland. But the most important fact I want to talk to you tonight is about the negative effect this proposal has on the people that we represent. Fact, on Thursday, our friends and neighbors in Riverside, Oak Island, and in the Pines section of our city experienced severe flooding in their streets, in their driveways, basements, and homes. These areas were covered with seawater from the Pines River. Fact, after Thursday's storm, Governor Baker acknowledged the need for collaborating with people from around the state to protect coastal communities from storm surges. Fact, filling in an area that was originally meant to protect the landfill and to alleviate the effects of stormwater surges certainly does nothing to protect our constituents. Final fact, more frequent and intense coastal storms, tidal surges, and floodings are inevitable in our coastal community. As elected leaders, it is our responsibility to mitigate the possible effects of these storm surges. This includes being responsible and opposing dumping more ash in an unlined ash landfill that is 1/2 mile from our neighbors in Revere, the Riverside section. And I just want to say thank you. And I know people have asked, well, if it doesn't go here, where does it go? It goes in a landfill that's state-of-the-art. It goes in a landfill that is not in the middle of a wetland. It goes in a landfill that is not next to people's homes. It goes in a landfill that is away, not in a perimeter of within 3 miles of 140,000 people. So it's not a question of not in our backyard. It's been in our backyard for 40 years. This company is trying to make it go to 50 years. It's unconscionable, it's unacceptable, and we need to put a stop to it. And I hope our city council, and I know that we have some very strong support from our Jessica, from Councilor Powers, Councilor McKenna, have all been at the front of this, and I'm just hoping that we can continue that. And I know in the past, almost all of our city councilors have voted in the affirmative to write letters. I'm hoping that will continue. It's unconscionable that we are allowing this to happen any longer, and I'm hoping for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Vincent. All right, at this time, I'm going to open it up to the city council. I'm going to start and just work our way straight down. Anyone on this side? Councilor Powers, Rizzo, Rotundo, and then Zambuto.
Thank you, Madam President. The comments made tonight are factual. I have been to many, when I say many, I'll say 3 or 4, of the meetings at the Saugus Town Hall, Saugus Library, Department of Public Health, speaking in opposition to any expansion. If you look at the size of those landfills, when you're driving down 107, the Lynn Marsh Road, they are in fact 1.5 times higher right now than the houses on Riverside. And that's a fact. No one can say with any certainty that if we had an incident maybe bigger than we had last Thursday, ash going into that river, what it would do. Now we know, because I see them, and I hear all about the good things that are happening in Saugus. They're building playgrounds, and they're building parks, and God knows what else. What about the kids that are playing in those playgrounds now? The kids that are playing in those parks? What's going to happen to them 20 or 30 years from now? You know, when you lose someone to lung cancer or a disease like that, it really makes you stop and think. Now the other argument out there is going to say, well, it's going to cost more money to transport it. Probably will. But what price is public health worth? When do you say, well, that's too much money, let the person pass? Not today in this generation. That's unacceptable. I got a call last week from one of the principals over there to come out and tour their plant. I don't have to tour their plant. I don't want to. I get calls at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when the plant malfunctions, that it has several times in the past, from people that live on Riverside and the other side of the Point of Pines. They can't sleep, the noise, constantly going. One time I called there and I spoke to one of the people there, and they said, well, we had a little problem with the roof or something on it. This is 100% wrong, and I think every member of this city council and every member of this community, particularly the people that live in Oak Island, Point of Pines, Lower Revere Street, Saugus, Lynn, and adjacent areas, should be concerned about this. It's something to be concerned about. It's your public health. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rizzo.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And first off, I just want to thank Representative Vincent for her staunch support in representing the residents, not only of the Riverside and the Point of Pines, which we know sits directly across from Wheelabrator, but really, in my mind, the entire city and the entire area that I believe could be impacted by their operations. This, I'm going to be very brief, Madam President. I don't want to repeat what the representative said and what Councilor Powers just said, but I'll just say this, a couple of things that resonated with me in looking at this issue over the years. This is an unlined operation, an unlined. I mean, think about that. This ash is going in to an unlined situation that no doubt could leach into the surrounding wetlands. I see the smoke that comes out of the stacks over there. How many people really know exactly which direction that's blowing in and what harmful toxins are included in that? To have an operation like that sit in the middle of an urban environment, to me, just makes no sense. And this was a plant that was supposed to actually shut down. Now, instead of shutting down, they're talking about adding more fuel to the fire. So, again, my thanks and gratitude to Representative Vincent. I support your motion, Madam President. I think we need to stand behind this. You know, we know that Revere, and you can get these facts and figures from Mass General, you know, we are higher than average when it comes to severe illness, whether it be asthma, cancer, and other related diseases and illnesses like that. And I, for one, am not going to rule out the operations of Wheelabrator as a significant factor, or at least a potential factor, in why some of these illnesses and diseases are impacting residents here in the city. So I'm glad we're going on record, or at least I assume we're going to go on record after a vote, and proud to support your efforts, Representative, in the legislature. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rotundo.
Thank you. I believe, and Representative, if you could correct me, I believe the last date to send comment, I think, is the 18th, if I'm not mistaken, or is it the 12th, Friday the 12th? That's right. Thank you. And that would be up at Mass DEP in Lowell. You can look it up on the website. Yep, no, I've already sent them a letter. And, you know, the issue is when you look at the qualitative studies and the review that they have there, so there's something called a pesimeter. What a pesimeter is it basically monitors the amount of infiltration of water that is displaced up there, and almost 55 million gallons a year are displaced in that particular valley. These are the reports from the DEP itself. It's actually right here in black and white. You can get it on the DEP website. It is their monofil study. So what troubles me, having worked in bone marrow transplant many years ago, is you don't know what you don't know. And so one of the things that I see with this particular issue is, you know, you can have kids playing on this field and everybody says it's okay, but the science today will not be the science of tomorrow. You can't predict tomorrow. And science is obviously ever-changing. And the one thing I do know is that when you're burning caustic things, that chromium, benzite, everything that you can think of that you have to have scrubbers and you have to have special procedures for, it's dangerous. It's that simple. And so this is an unlined system that is leaching into the river. No matter what they say, they cannot account for 100% of it. In fact, that's what they state within their own study. So this is both the state, this is both Wheelabrator. These are things that are noted. You can't predict for the overflow surge 100% of the time. And don't get me wrong, they're doing everything they can to do the best that they can. But is it worth your life? And we live in an area that have the highest rates of solid organ cancer. esophageal, lung. I can go through the list of it. The highest. We're not talking the minimal. We're talking the highest. Winthrop, Revere, Everett, East Boston, highest. There was a woman in Saugus, a nurse that I had met briefly over at Cane's Donuts, and she did an actual health survey of the area. And it's one of the things that I'd like to see if we could get done this year, is a health survey, and find out how many people are affected by asthma, cancer, and other particular diseases associated with these types of issues. I'm going to guarantee you it's going to be through the roof. Now, whether it be part and parcel of Wheelbarrow, whether it be part and parcel of living near the airport, I can guarantee you these rates are going to be so high. So do you add more possibility to the equation, or do you try to lessen it? Personally, I believe in lessening it. I hope people follow everybody's lead here for the most part and send it in to the DEP, telling them their displeasure and why, and give them reasons, give them specific reasons. Look online for people who wrote letters and look at their letters and pick out what suits you and denunciate as best as you can why this should not take place. After all, it's our children's lives. I mean, it's that simple. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Zambudo.
Thank you, Madam President. With all due respect, I find the motion fiscally irresponsible, but more than that. Now, we heard a lot of quote-unquote facts. Some of them were facts. All of them were facts. I didn't interrupt you, ma'am. Please don't interrupt me. Number one, we're talking about an unlined landfill. Well, why was that approved? Why? Because there's a collection system for the water. Not a drop of water escapes that site. It's a collection system. Those of us who have toured the place, who have done the studies, who have actually looked into this, know what goes on up there. I happen to be one of those people. No water leaves that site. It's a clay site. The reason it was approved is because that clay is much less penetrable than a thin vinyl liner that is used in the lined landfills. With all of that said, one of the facts that were thrown out there was toxic, and I didn't laugh at you either. One of the facts that was supposedly thrown out there was that it was toxic ash. The DEP and the EPA say it's non-toxic ash. Those are the same people that tell us we have to move dirt that babies can eat, okay? So if they tell me it's non-toxic, guess what? I believed them. Now, why do I get emotional and excited about this? We have a 10-year contract with this company. Now, there were some health studies talked about here, and they're not factual. There is no more cancer near that plant than there is in any other urban area. My mother died of cancer when I was 18 years old. I wanted to blame somebody for that. I wanted to blame somebody for her cancer. So I feel the pain of people who have lost loved ones, who have loved ones with cancer. I feel it because I grew up with it. But that doesn't mean Wheelabrator is causing that cancer. Now, let's talk about the reality. They're looking to fill the valleys in with non-toxic ash up there. Again, EPA, DEP call it non-toxic. Forgive me, but I believed them. We have this 10-year contract with Wheelabrator to bring our trash to be burnt in a waste-to-energy plant. That's the safest form of energy there is, waste-to-energy. It's the most environmentally friendly energy we can produce. But that's not why I'm in favor of, and why I'm writing a letter in favor of the expansion of the non-toxic ash. That 10-year contract we have with Wheelabrator, if they were forced to truck the ash to Shrewsbury or somewhere else, forget about the 50 or 60 trucks a day through Revere. How's that for your carbon footprint? The bottom line is, it'd probably be $15 or so more a ton in our tipping fees. Well, what does that mean? That's no big deal. What's $15 a ton? Well, let's assume that extrapolates to $300 on a senior's tax bill. You know how many seniors you'll make homeless that are on a fixed income? That's why I'm against writing a letter against the expansion of this non-toxic ash. I don't know, you know, it would be a lot easier for me to sign on to a feel-good motion, because most of the stuff that was talked about by my colleagues and by the representative tonight was emotionally based. Some of the words that were used were, even if we don't know, it may be, and the science may be 20 years from now. But the science right now says that there's nothing going on up that plant that is causing health problems. In fact, there's a wildlife sanctuary up there. There's birds that land up there that don't land in any place where there's pollution. They land there, one of the only places in the world that they land. That ought to tell you something. I blame Wheelabrator for not educating people as to what goes on up there. I blame them for not letting people see the filtration system and how all the water is collected on that site and how none of it goes out. And all the water that's collected is used to produce the steam that produces the energy. That's what goes on up there. The bottom line is, I'm in favor of this expansion because, number one, it's not a health issue, and number two, I'm fiscally responsible protecting my taxpayers and my seniors. So that's why, without personally attacking anybody, that's why I'm in favor, and I can't sign on to this motion, and I am writing a letter in support of the ash landfill up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Revere.
You know, and I hate to beleaguer my colleagues for this time. Science is ever-changing. If we would go on to standards that we had 50 years ago and we put them today, we would not be able to use aspirin because of the side effects of that drug. We would not. We evolve. Science evolves, and you learn better techniques in order to maintain homeostasis. That's the difference between science and emotion. Emotion is based upon inner feelings. Science is based upon data and information. The data that's presented to the state by Wheelabrator shows that there are waters that do leach outside of the system. It's their information. They have to report it by state law. In federal law, they have to report it. Their study shows that that water does displace outside of their system. That is a fact. There is no denying that question. There is no debating that issue. It is their reported study. Just like the city of Revere has to report when we have storm surges and they have overflow. In fact, that's why we're being fined. And that's why the good people of the city of Revere are now stuck with $100 million in cleaning up our water and sewer issues, because water gets displaced when it shouldn't. That happens up there too. In fact, they have to report it. We do have the highest levels of cancer. That is reported at the state level. These are facts. These cannot be denied. Now, if you want to compare them to any other urban area, well, of course. You want to compare them to Detroit, you want to compare them to New York, or you want to compare them to neighborhoods within Revere, Chelsea, Everett, etc. I can guarantee you, if you take a look at the information that's presented to the state, the facts, by the state, not by George Rotundo, not by anybody else. The information's there. It's undeniable. We have higher rates. End of story.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Patch?
Thank you, Madam President. I had no problem writing a letter the last time. I agree with the representative, Vincent, that, and I have the same point of view. But I need some clarification. I thought I read in a Boston paper that this was already a done deal, that they already got the approval to do this. Is that correct or not?
Can you hear me?
I'm sorry,
That mic doesn't work.
No, I'll speak loud. No, we have until the 12th to submit testimony, and after the testimony, then the Department of Environmental Protection will then make a decision on it. So we have a few more days to have people write letters of testimony and explain to them why we are opposed. And there was not one item in my statement that is not a proven fact, and I can back up every statement with confirmation. And the Department of Environmental Protection lists in their own site that Saugus Wheelabrator is unlined. It's in their site. Vicki, I don't know, did you find it? It's unlined. So how, it's unlined, and you're saying that it's lined, and that it's a safety liner, and
As a point of information, if I can respond to the representative, I didn't want to get into a back and forth.
Okay.
My statement was that it's better than a lined landfill because of the clay in the collection system, the water collection system that's up there. That's what my statement was, not that it was lined. It's lined with natural clay that is impenetrable, and it is proven to be much better than the 40 millimeter liner that they put in landfills. That's all I said. I didn't say that it was.
With all due respect, State Representative and Councilor Zambudo.
Okay, we're not going to get into
I don't want to get into the ins and
the
outs
floor
of
here.
We'll
Wheelabrator.
agree to
Councilor
disagree.
Patch does have
We'll
the
agree to
floor.
disagree.
I think that there are a million facts and statements and comments. We can talk about Wheelabrator all night. Of course.
unlined ash landfill, it's a clay landfill. It's proven that it's porous. It's a porous landfill, and it does leak.
Councilor Patch?
Yes, thank you for answering my question. I don't want to back and forth here. We're never going to change my colleague's opinion, and he has a right to his opinion. I just thought that I intend to write a letter again to them, but I'm almost positive. I thought I heard that this was like a done deal, but I will do that again before the 12th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Patch. If I may speak from the chair, this is something that is near and dear to my heart, not for emotional reasons, but for factual reasons. And it's something that, since I've been in office, that I've always, supported protecting the city from this. Back in 2016, when they wanted to expand the last time, State Representative Vincent and I sat on the Alliance for Health and Environment and worked with the town of Saugus. This is something that affects every part of the city of Revere. Just because you can't see it from your window, although a lot of our residents can, this is something that travels by air, it travels by water, and it is all around us. If you sit in Councilor Guanasso's backyard, you can see it in Ward 3, you can see it in the hills in Ward 5, you can see it on the beach in Ward 1, and something that affects every part of the city, and something that I feel very strongly against. So I appreciate the support of my colleagues. I also respect the disagreement and the concerns of my other colleagues, and you know what? That's part of the reason why we're up here. We don't have to agree about everything, but we have to represent the people in a way we feel is appropriate, and that's what we're here to do. So I'll call a roll call on this. Anyone that wishes to be a part of the letter is more than welcome to, and I encourage it. If anyone does not wish to be a part of it, you don't have to be, and that is the beauty of government. Madam Clerk.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Howard?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor...
No.
Yes. On reconsideration with hopes that it does not prevail? All in favor? While we're under suspension of rules, I'm also going to take up calendar item number 13 for one of our department heads, Julie DeMauro, who's here this evening.
Julie DeMauro with City of Revere Healthy Community Initiatives Office. This communication is just for a request for a public hearing to put some abandoned bike ordinances into the city ordinances. The ordinance is similar to that of the abandoned shopping cart ordinances. And this is in preparation for the springtime bike share program that will be instituted into the city, as well as the different bike share companies that will be operating in the other municipalities that surround us.
Any councilors have any Councilor Novoselsky. Come join me.
Julie. Hi, Julie, thank you for this. Rick's back. Yeah, the questions I have is that now,
Oh, perfect.
is there already an ordinance prepared for this?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is there an ordinance already prepared to go into effect?
So currently there is, hold on. So currently there is no ordinance for abandoned bikes. What I did attach in the agenda was an ordinance that is modeled after the shopping cart ordinance, and it was attached in your packet. I do have a copy of it here now. So that's one ordinance that's going to be instituted on the city council side of the ordinance. There'll be another ordinance being issued under the parking and the traffic, and that's actually in relation to bicycle parking. And that's where that would fall, because bicycles are considered a moving vehicle, and anything that can be parked will be under the traffic.
How do they identify an abandoned bike?
So what we experienced during the pilot program this fall was that we were seeing that bikes were being left out and not collected by the different companies that had bike shares here in the city. So the city of Revere piloted with OFO, but because Malden had piloted with two other companies, OFO and Lime Bike, we were starting to see some of the Lime bikes end up here in the city of Revere. And we noticed that these bikes were staying here. They weren't being moved. They weren't being picked up. So we're looking at anything that will be not the way that the ordinance has been written. It's any bicycle left unattended, freestanding, unlocked, or locked to a fence, parking meter, or bike rack, or obstructing the public way or access to handicap ramps for more than 48 hours will be considered abandoned and removed by the city of Revere. So it'll be a fine of $25 per day. They will be stored by DPW. They will not be able to get the bike back unless they pay the city the daily fee of $25.
So these are more the commercial bikes rather than...
So it will be mostly the commercial bikes, because most of the privately owned bikes, as the residents, they're riding around, they're locking them, or they're being brought into their home. What we want to do is we want to create some structure around bike sharing for the city. We recognize that this is going to happen. It's going to happen not only here in Revere, it's going to happen in all of the surrounding municipalities. And I want to make a point, though, that some of the municipalities that surround us, they may be actually hiring not just one bike share company, but two. And so we all may be hiring different companies. We have our own, and then we have two additional companies kind of infiltrating into the city. We just want to create some order. We also want to let the vendors know that, yes, if the bike comes here, you need to come pick it up. That's part of your marketing plan. It needs to happen.
Have they picked up all the OFO bikes?
Is there been what? I'm
Have they
sorry.
picked up all the OFO bikes?
No, I believe there's one left at the end of True Street, and there's also one, I believe, at the Whalen School.
There's also one at Planet Fitness,
Okay,
as of tonight.
okay. All right, so I will get a list, and I will let them know.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rotundo.
Thank you, and thank you, Julie, for presenting this. Quick question, just looking across the vast landscape, we've got multiple cities that are engaged in this: Boston, Chelsea, Everett, Revere, et cetera. Why can't we just all sit down and talk about this in a general consensus, do some cost sharing across the board, select one? I know it's going to be hard because, it's obviously wrangling self-interest, but at the very least, talking about, having a big conglomerate, if you will, or I hate to use the word compact, because people who use bikes in Revere, they drive to Everett, or they bike to Everett or to Boston and so forth. It would be more homogeneous for every user within the area, kids coming from Boston wanting to go to Revere Beach in the summer. And, I think that would be a benefit to the city.
So currently, MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, has a request for proposals for a procurement process for several cities. We are actually in that procurement process at this time. The way it is written, we do not have to sign on. So if they
So
pick,
an opt-out.
we can opt out. And one of the reasons that is because some of the specifics in that RFP do not really work for the city at this time.
Sure.
One of them is electric bicycles, so that would create another situation here for the city as well. I don't know the number that they would be required to have, but that would be something that we would have to really look into.
And there's a cost issue
Yeah.
associated with it, sure, I
The
understand.
other thing is, too, is that we are hoping to have some sort of a fee paid to us by the vendor that would help with the infrastructure costs for all of these, to help pay for striping the bike lanes and things like that. And that's something we would have to negotiate on our own, regardless of the RFP.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other counselors? This will be going to a public hearing on January 22nd.
Thank you.
Usually goes to a committee after the public hearing. Well, we'll go to the public hearing, and then from that point, we can put it in a committee.
This morning, I just received that ordinance this morning, and I still have to get the sections ready to go, to be advertised. It's,
If I can speak from here, I think I can speak loud enough. I would think in the future that if the mayor's office, folks that work for the mayor come up to us, that everything should be in order already, rather than throwing it at us and say, I want it in the council tonight. I don't think this is appropriate, it's appropriate for what we want to do, but I think the process is wrong. And I think it should be more defined and come through the proper channels in the proper format in order to call it to a public hearing. I don't mind going through this now, but I think it should be put in a committee and, clarified. Maybe some of the committee wants to talk about it further on the bicycles. I think maybe the committee wants to talk about it further before it goes to a public hearing.
I don't see any problem if it going with public safety as well as a public hearing on the 22nd.
But I think the process should be clarified and enforced rather than
I agree.
just put it in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. So this will be going to public safety as well as a public hearing on the 22nd. This time we'll return to our regular order of business. All in favor? Calendar item number 5.
on calendar item number 6. Motion presented by Councilor Janino in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 17 of the Acts of 2012 that the City Council reappoint Ashley Melnick as City Clerk for a term of 5 years.
Councilors?
Roll call.
So, this side, raise your hand. Anyone on this side want to speak? Yes, no, maybe? No? Okay. Counselor Rizzo.
Madam President, I know several councilors may want to speak, and this being my first real meeting back with our city clerk, I had the good fortune to work with her prior to leaving the city council back in 2012, and I not only witnessed her as a member of the city council back at that time, but of course during my years as mayor when she'd preside over these meetings, and I think by all accounts she's done a tremendous job, and I look forward to supporting her reappointment tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rotundo, Zambudo, and then we'll go back to that side.
All right, so just call me lazy. Is there a way that we can extend the term from 5 to 7 or 10, just to kind of, you know?
Madam Clerk?
Is there a possibility of that?
Councilor Rotundo, that would need to be done through special legislation.
All right, I'm for it. Let's talk about it.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm proud to say that I was one of the biggest advocates for Ashley Melnick to become our city clerk. And this time I can, with some humility, say it was one of my best picks. She has been outstanding. I don't think anybody has ever had anything negative to say about the way she performs her duties here. And so I'm certainly in favor of this, but I would also be in favor of special legislation to extend the term. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Patch, and then we'll jump to that side.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with Councilor Zambudo. I remember when Ashley first came up for the job, I supported her the first time, and I watched her grow over the years, doing an outstanding job. I believe it was a very good pick. And I would like also to probably, if we could, to go to the legislature and get it increased the number of years. So I'm, again, going to gladly vote for Ashley as the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Powers?
Thank you, Madam President. I can't think of anyone in this building that puts the effort into her position that Ashley does. I have watched her, as Councilor Pat said, grow in stature and professionalism during the time she has been in the position. It's a tough job. You've got 11 people asking you to do this and that and the other thing. And then you've got people coming into the counter. Oh, why did I get this ticket? I don't want to pay this. I don't want to do that. I mean, I'm surprised that at this point here, we haven't had to put up some type of a thick glass between that counter, because God forbid something serious could happen there. If you turn on the nightly news and you see it every night. See it at 6 o'clock, you see it at 6:30, you see it at 11 o'clock. So I think that she does a great job, and I think that maybe that's something that this council should look at, putting some type of a barrier up there similar that they have in the collector's office before something serious happens. And I mean that. I'm serious about that.
I agree, Counselor.
Thank you, Madam President.
Counselor Guanasso?
Madam President, certainly it's, without saying what a wonderful job she's done. She's a pleasure to work with. She returns calls within minutes, and she has to put up with me on several occasions, and she never complains. She's just a great person to work with, and I just think that the type of people we need, and we want to show our community what type of person she is, because they don't get to work with her on a day-to-day basis, but we certainly all do, and we certainly recognize her qualities and her temperament, and she just handles it all so well. And I just I am so lucky to be reelected and to be working with her again for 2 more years, because I really enjoy her friendship and her professionalism. I think she does a tremendous job, and I don't think we could have made a better selection. And certainly, my thoughts go out that any provisions that we could provide for her security and a longer standing, I'd be willing to do that. Again, I think Ashley's just wonderful, and she knows what I think of her, because I've told her on many occasions that she has went far and beyond what she needed to do, and she did it with a smile, and I recognize her. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Keith.
Thank you, Madam President. I echo the sentiment of the rest of the council. It's a pleasure to see Ms. Melnick. She's very blushed right now, some of the words that we have, but I've only experienced one city clerk in my tenure, and I can't imagine where she learned everything from. But she's made everyone's job here a lot easier from the city council standpoint. There's this high level of professionalism down in the clerk's office. She truly is a diamond in the rough, and we being the rough. I hope that we can continue to work with Ashley for 5 years, and 5 years after that, and for however long that we're, as a city, fortunate enough to have her. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam President. I hope your head's not that big so you can't walk out that door, Ashley, because, and everybody who's saying wonderful things about you, it's true. I just want to say that I was Ashley's teacher, and I used to teach her, and now she's teaching me. And she goes above and beyond, and I cherish her as a colleague, and I do cherish your friendship. So thank you very much, and I strongly support you coming back for 5 more years. Thank you.
Counselor Morbido.
Yeah, old habits. First, to the city clerk, Ashley, I want to say thank you. You do an unbelievable job managing your department. The flow of traffic that comes in and out of that office, and I think, I didn't want to say something that's redundant, but the amount of people that come in your office throughout the workday and the way your office handles it is a reflection of you as a manager and a leader. So thank you for that. When I began 4 years ago as a city councilor, no one tells you, a lot of people run for office. There's probably hundreds of candidates who have run over the last 10 years. And there is a process to it once you get in that people don't tell you. And when I tell you, Ashley was a fountain of information. She was always accessible to me. Not only to me, I hope I can speak for everyone else. She's accessible for most of us. And no matter how busy she is, whether that line is down the City Hall, whether it's down the halls of City Hall, she makes herself accessible, and she understands the process. She knows the process. And each year, she gains more and more experience, and I look at her as a fountain of information. So thank you for your guidance, and I am in favor of your reappointment.
Counselor Novoselsky.
Oh, wow. Well, the night that we had the vote for her, that was one of the proudest moments I had to say Ashley Melnick for city clerk. She and I have worked together very well in a lot of items and ordinance changes, and she's a great source for everybody to go to. And Councilor Morabito mentioned the people that come into the office that she has to deal with. It's not only deal with, but put up with. And I know it was mentioned about the safety factor there, and she's concerned about it. She and I talk about renovating and moving things around the clerk's office to make things better. And I can say that she's helped bring us into the 21st century with everything that we have, with all the mechanical stuff and the Facebooks and the emails. And it's just nice to work with her. And I'm glad we did it, and as far as I'm concerned, she'll always get my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. If I may speak from the chair, I don't think a lot of people understand truly how multifaceted Ashley's job is. She has to interface with every department within City Hall and within the city of Revere. She has to put up with all 11 of us and our questions and comments and concerns, and the secretarial aspect of, being the city clerk, as well as being a human dictionary and knowing every ordinance and law and question that we may ask her or the general public may ask her, and as well as interacting with the public. That door is one of the first doors when you walk in City Hall that you come to, and oftentimes the first door that everyone stops in if they don't read the signs. So Ashley deals with everything, as well as managing her department incredibly. So we're very, very lucky to have her, and I would be in full support of working on special legislation to extend that term. But I think tonight it's really important to move this forward, and then we look at that additionally. And on that, we'll ask for a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So ordered.
Madam President,
Counselor.
motion to send to Solicitor Capizzi a request for special legislation for a 10-year term for city clerk, please.
Great motion. On the motion, all in favor? To extend Ashley, for the city solicitor to look into extending the term. All in favor? All opposed? We will send this to the solicitor.
Thank you, councilors. Next slide.
Calendar item number 6.
No, 7. I'm sorry, there's an update.
Oh, mine's off. All right, we're off at one. Calendar item number 7.
Calendar item number 7, motion presented by Councilor Rizzo, that the mayor instruct the director of parking to monitor and enforce the 2-hour parking signs located at the top of Vinyl Street, just off of Broadway.
Counselor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This is one of the kind of motions that I was referring to earlier. We can talk to parking enforcement, but it is good that we now have a documented piece of paper where we can say that that these residents are looking for help, and that these 2-hour parking signs need to be monitored. It is impacting residents' quality of life down there. As we know, parking is a huge issue here in the city. This is just one motion that impacts one street, and there could probably be 300 or 400 of these types of motions put in around the city. But this was a request from a resident down there that's getting extremely frustrated, and so hopefully this can be addressed by our parking enforcement department. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors? On the motion, all in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Madam President?
Yes.
My apologies, but I would like to add Ward 1 City Councilor Joanne McKenna to this motion, as it is her motion. I was remiss in not including her name on it, so my apologies, Councilor.
We'll add Counselor McKenna to the motion. Calendar item number 8.
Motion presented by Councilor Rizzo, that the mayor instruct the city solicitor and director of finance to provide a detailed accounting of all payments made to outside legal counsel for fiscal year 17 and thus far in fiscal year 18, and specifically which attorneys and firms have received such payments.
Counselor?
Thank you very much, Madam President. I have been, there's certain things that you can pick up in the budget, and there's others that you can't. And of course, again, not to be redundant, but this being my first meeting back on the City Council, I do want to get up to speed on where our finances are at. And I have been very interested in getting an accounting of outside legal fees. I've heard numbers that seemed extremely high to me, but I want the documentation so that we can go back and visit it and see what might be the cause of it. There may not be any payments that need to be looked at extraordinarily hard, but then again, there might be. So I would like an accounting of all outside legal fees that have been spent, not only thus far in 2018, but in FY17 as well.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rotundo.
Thank you. This is something that I've asked for in the past. And what I would request is that we have a line item detailing particularly which attorneys, for what purpose, and the exact hourly rate that we're paying them, and the number of hours in which they provided service. I'd like to see where the exact numbers are on this. More importantly, from which fund was these particular attorneys paid from? And I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other counselors? On the motion, all in favor? All opposed? So ordered. Calendar item number 9.
Motion presented by Councilor Rizzo that the mayor instruct the Director of Finance to provide an update with regards to our current level of free cash, along with all free cash transfers since January of 2016, the current status of our bond rating, and provide a copy of the most recent outside auditor's report.
Counselor?
Thank you very much, Madam President. I would also like to amend the motion to include any transfers from the overlay account as well. So if, Madam Clerk, if you wouldn't mind noting that. The motion basically speaks for itself. Of course, we know the importance of our bond rating, and I know there's been at least 2 times, possibly 3, where we've refunded our long-term debt and saved hundreds of thousands of dollars just having that ability because of our strong bond rating. And I just want to make sure that we are still in a situation that is maintaining that strong bond rating and working as hard as we can to increase that bond rating, because we know with any capital projects that this city pursues, the less money that the taxpayers have to spend in interest payments on these bonds is doing our job and allowing us to finance other areas in the city budget. So I'd appreciate the council's approval.
Counselor Rotundo.
Thank you. The redundancy and echoing of this issue is profound. The one issue that I have here is the outside audit report. I've asked for it on numerous occasions. I would like to know why I have not been able to get this report. This was something that was done well over 1.5 years ago. And this should be on file with the council. We should have what was at issue, what was found, what were the remedies. And, we paid, I think it was a substantial amount of money for this particular audit instead of using the state auditor. So I'd like to know what's going on with this. And I believe it's only good business, and as we have the people to ensure the fiduciary responsibilities of our community, I would hope that this could get forward to us ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors? On the motion, all in favor? All opposed? So ordered. Calendar item number 10.
Motion presented by Councilor Powers that the
Great motion. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Madam President. Anyone who drives by Wonderland Park can see what I'm talking about. Plate glass in the windows, cracked, half of it's gone. All that has to happen is a piece of that to fall on someone that's trespassing, whether it be an adult or a child in there. And God knows what type of injury, or even worse, could happen down there. So what I would like is the building inspector to contact the LLC in New York, or maybe even a little speedier, Mr. Tuttle, who seems to be the operations guy down there, and get those windows out of there before someone gets hurt. I'd also like to know from Mr. Tuttle or their attorney why the demolition has stopped. Councilor and former Mayor Bob Hass and I worked very hard to get that initiated down there. And they did some work down there. But now it's just stopped, and there's piles of rubble sitting there. And to me, that's unacceptable, and it's unacceptable to the people that live adjacent to that property, and it's unacceptable to the residents of this city that drive by there on a daily basis. And something I haven't mentioned tonight in this motion, they own a piece of property there that's large. There's a sidewalk that runs from Shawmut Street all the way down to the MBTA Blue Line entrance. It's their responsibility to plow that sidewalk. And I know they made an attempt, but it's a half-assed attempt. The snow on the sidewalk is still 5 or 6 inches deep. And I would like the building inspector to get down there right away. Tell them to clean that sidewalk off, tell them to get the glass out of there, and supply the city council at our next meeting, by our next meeting at the 22nd, why the demolition has stopped and when they can expect it to be completed. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors? On the motion, all in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 11, motion presented by Councilors Zambudo and Powers that the mayor request the DPW to install a memorial bench in Ambrose Park for Dickie Smith. Ambrose Park was the first handicap accessible park in Revere as a result of a proposal by lead Councilor Dickie Smith.
Start with Counselor Zambudo and then Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Madam President. This really speaks for itself, but this is true. It was the first handicap accessible park, and it was because of Councilor Dick Smith, and I think this would be a nice way to memorialize him, and I would like his family to pick the exact spot because he used to go down there a lot. So that's the impetus behind this. Thank you.
It's a great motion, and I hope we can celebrate in the spring when we can see the park under all the snow. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Madam President. I would ask that either someone from the mayor's office or the city clerk's office get a hold of his wife Kathy or his daughter Wanda and make arrangements to designate a spot down there for that bench to go, because Dickie Smith, this was originally part of Ward 3, I believe, and Dickie Smith did a great job as a counselor, and certainly would be pleased to know that something like that in his memory was going there. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Grasso.
Thank you, Madam President. Dick Smith was the individual that I beat running for Ward 3 Council, and from that we had a friendship before, and after that we had a greater friendship. I would be honored if I could be added to this motion, and I think it's a great motion, and I can still see Dickie walking down to the park to sit there, and I think he would love this particular, and I think it's a wonderful idea, and I applaud you for coming forward with this because he would really appreciate that. He was a great guy, and as years go on, he was going door to door with me, knocking on doors to solicit support for myself.
My apologies for not adding you to it in the beginning.
Thank you, Councilor.
It was an oversight.
It would be my pleasure to be added to this. Thank you.
Any other counselors? On the motion with the addition of Counselor Grasso. All in favor? All opposed? So ordered. There's no further business this evening. The City Council will be adjourned until January 22nd at 6 p.m. in this chambers. Thank you all and have a good night.